Ever wonder how some companies just consistently seem to crush their competition? Well, a lot of the time, it comes down to something that sounds really simple but is incredibly hard to get right: managing their processes. Today, we're going to break down a really powerful framework for building a competitive advantage that actually lasts. And spoiler alert, it's not about quick fixes. It's about a smart, structured way of getting better, literally from the ground up. Okay, let's get into it.
We have to start with a warning, because this is exactly where so many companies go off the rails. Leaders are constantly being sold on these so-called magic solutions, right? The latest management buzzword, the hot new trend. But as this quote points out, grabbing for a solution before you even understand your real problem, well, that's a recipe for disaster. It's like trying to build your business completely backward.
So if jumping on the latest trend is the wrong way, then what's the right way? I mean, how do you actually, systematically, build a stronger, more competitive business? That is the big question, and that's exactly what we're going to lay out for you.
So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to bust that magic solution myth wide open. Then we'll introduce this fantastic metaphor: building your business like a house. From there, we'll talk about choosing your materials, making those critical foundational decisions, and then creating a management playbook to run the whole thing. And we're going to end on what is, without a doubt, the most important step: diagnose before you build.
All right, let's jump right into that first big trap, the idea of a quick fix. It's so tempting, isn't it? But man, it is almost always a distraction from the real work that actually needs to get done.
Just think about it this way. If you have a leaky pipe in your wall, painting over the water stain doesn't fix a thing, right? It's the exact same thing in business. Slapping a trendy management tool like, say, total quality management or re-engineering onto your company without first figuring out the root cause of your problems, well, you're just painting over the stain. All it leads to is wasted money, frustrated people, and absolutely zero real improvement.
So, if quick fixes are out, what's in? Well, the answer is a structured, step-by-step approach. And honestly, the best way to wrap your head around it is to think about building a house.
This analogy is just so simple and so powerful. In business, just like in construction, the order you do things in matters a lot. You have to pour a solid foundation first. Then you put up the walls, and only then can you even think about putting on the roof. If you try to do it in any other order, the whole thing just collapses. So the key takeaway is this: you have to solve your problems in the right sequence.
And here it is. This is the sequence. Now, this diagram is from the original source, so you'll notice it's in Spanish, but don't worry about that. The concept is totally universal. It lays out 4 levels of problems that businesses face, starting at the bottom with what's called reconversión. The whole key to this is that you have to tackle them in order, from the bottom up, 1 through 4. So let's break down what each of these levels actually means.
Okay, here are those 4 levels in English. At the very bottom, our foundation, we have reconversion. Then, once that's solid, you build the walls, which is reorganization. After that, you've got rethinking processes. That's like figuring out the layout of the rooms and how everything flows together. And then finally, way up at the top, you have management improvement. This is the ongoing upkeep, the upgrades that keep your house in perfect shape for years to come.
Let's put a little more meat on these bones. You see the progression, right? Reconversion isn't about little tweaks. This is about the big, existential stuff. Do we even have the right technology? Is anyone buying our product anymore? Once that's sorted, reorganization tackles the internal chaos. Who reports to who? Who's in charge of what? Then, and only then, do you get to rethinking processes to make workflows better. And look at what's at the very top: management improvement. This is where all those famous buzzwords like Kaizen or total quality actually live. They're the final polish, not the starting point.
Okay, so we have the blueprint for our house. Now we need to decide what to build it out of. And in business, these materials are your key performance variables, the fundamental things you're going to compete on in the market.
This slide lays out the 5 big variables every company has to grapple with. Are you going to win on cost, the lightning speed of your delivery time, the incredible quality of your product, your flexibility to give customers exactly what they want, or the amazing services you wrap around your product? Now, the most important word here is prioritize. You cannot be the best at everything. If a leader tells you all 5 of these are very important, they don't have a strategy. Strategy is about making the hard choices.
Now, the decisions you make about those variables, they fall into 2 big buckets: the really big foundational choices, and then the more day-to-day tactical ones. And this slide splits them up perfectly. Structural decisions are the heavy lifts. They're long-term, they're expensive, and they are super hard to undo, like deciding to build a new factory.
Management variables, on the other hand, are all about how you run things inside that structure, your quality control systems, your workforce planning. And here's the critical takeaway. You have to get the structure right first.
So let's look a little closer at those huge structural decisions. We're talking about things like capacity. How big do we need to be? Infrastructure. Where in the world should we put our facilities? Technology. Are we betting on the right tools for the next decade? And vertical integration. This one is massive. What parts of our business do we absolutely have to own, and what can we trust our partners to do?
And let's look at a killer example of that vertical integration decision. Remember when Nokia was on top of the world? They were dominating giants like Motorola. But here's the thing, Nokia only did about 25% of its entire value chain themselves. They were masters of strategic outsourcing. Same thing with Benetton, who outsourced most of their manufacturing to focus on what they did best. See, these weren't just little tactical moves. These were game-changing, foundational decisions that gave them a massive competitive edge. So, you've poured the foundation. You've made your big structural choices. Now what? Well, now you need the playbook that brings that strategy to life every single day.
You know, great management isn't some one-and-done project. It's a continuous loop, just like you see in this diagram. It all starts with a deep commitment to quality. That focus on quality then shapes how you manage your day-to-day processes. But here's the part that closes the loop and makes it all work. Measurement. If you're not measuring your performance, you're just flying blind. You have to measure what matters to know if your strategy is actually working.
And this is what that measurement actually looks like. This isn't just some abstract theory, this is a real-world dashboard. For every key part of your business, your equipment, your quality, your inventory, you define specific concrete things to measure. Are you tracking the percentage of products you have to rework, the number of training hours for your team, how fast your inventory is turning over? This is where your big picture strategy gets real.
And that's the whole point of it. This dashboard is the bridge connecting the strategy meeting in the boardroom to what's actually happening on the factory floor. It's how you make sure those big strategic bets you made are paying off. If the number on this dashboard starts going sideways, that's your early warning signal that the strategy might be drifting off course. It is, basically, the nervous system of your entire operation.
Okay, this brings us to what I think is the single most important idea in this entire explainer. It's the one thing you absolutely have to get right before you do anything else.
And here it is, the core message of everything we've talked about. Before you pick a tool, before you launch some big new initiative, your first job is always the hard work of diagnosis. It's about taking a deep, honest look and figuring out which level of problem you're really dealing with. Is it a foundational reconversion issue or something higher up the pyramid? A proper diagnosis isn't just a nice-to-have, it is the absolute prerequisite for any strategy that has a chance of succeeding.
And that really leaves us with one final question to think about. When you look at your own company, your own team, are you building its future on a solid foundation, or are you maybe trying to put a fancy new roof on a house that has crumbling walls? Because the answer to that question could literally determine your entire future.